He's a veteran of the Vietnam War. He served in combat as an infantry soldier and a member of the famed Buffalo Soldiers. If you know anything about the history of the Buffalo Soldiers, their name arrived from what the Sioux or other Indian tribes, I don't think it was the Sioux, I think it was another Indian tribe, who were describing them as buffaloes, looking like buffaloes because of their hair. It was very cut short and resembled the fur. You would think that would be a derogatory term, but sometimes people take things like that and they turn it into pride. And you will find out that this is very much the case with Sergeant Downs. He is a recipient of the Bronze Star, and he completed over 30 years of service in the United States Army. At 20 years, you're considered a lifer. I don't know what you do after 30. But I would like you to please welcome Sergeant Johnnie Downs. There you go.
I'd like to thank everybody coming out here to speak today. When Mr. Tim Burns asked me to come and speak, I looked up the definition of what a library is. And I found out that a library is named after great people, like Twinsburg is named after Twinsburg Library. Nixon has a library named after me, so it is an honor. It is a great honor for Mr. Tim Burns to bestow this honor on me today, to come out and speak to all you beautiful people that's in here today. Okay, I'd like to tell you something about myself. My name is Sergeant First Class Johnnie Downs. I was in the military for 32 years, 6 months, 24 days, 32 minutes, 23 seconds. Okay. You know, when I stayed in the military for a long time, a lot of the young soldiers would come to me and they said, well, Sergeant Downs, how do you know when it's how do you know when it's time? You've been in the military. He said, how do you know when it's time to retire? And I distinctly remember one day I was watching an interview, and it was an interview with Rodney Dangerfield. And Rodney Dangerfield said something. He said he was one of the older actors in Hollywood. And he said the young actors would come to him and say, Rodney, how do you know when it's time to retire? So Rodney looked at everybody and he said, well, he said on Sunday night, you come home, you get your favorite chair. He said, you sit in your favorite chair. He said, you get your remote out, and he says that when it takes you an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes, it's time to retire. And so that's where I'm at now. It takes me an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. I like to share with all you people in the room, when you first come in my display right there, you see a football. It was never my dream. It was never my dream to be an American soldier. Never. And in my high school years, I had made the all-city team. My dream was to go to college, go to Ohio State, play football, be on wide roller sports and everything. I see the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. That was my dream to go. Okay, at the end of the football season, all the coaches was coming around, and a lot of the kids was getting drafted. And they were getting scholarship to college. But nobody came out and knocked on my door. And I didn't understand why nobody knocked on my door. I had made the all-city team. I had my picture in the paper, and nobody called me. Nobody said anything. And then I heard from the other football players. He said, well, I went down to Ohio State this weekend. They took me on the campus. And one of the other players said, I went to Michigan, and they took me on the campus, and I didn't understand why. And I became bitter, and I became angry. So I went home, and I was sitting on the bed one day, and I was sitting in my bedroom, and my mother come in there, she said, boy, what's wrong with you? I said, nothing. She said, boy, I said, what's wrong with you? I said, Mommy, no. She said, and my mother had a finger like this, and she could thump me on it. And you could hear, pop! And she thumped me upside the head, and I told her what I said, Mama, everybody getting a scholarship, and I can't understand why I'm not getting a scholarship. And I was one of the star players on the team. So my mother, I had never seen my mother walk that fast in all my life. She got her purse, she put up, and we walked up to the school. The minute we walked into the school, the coach saw us and he started walking. And she told him, stop. She pointed, she said, stop right there. She said, why isn't my son getting a scholarship like the other players? He's done everything. She said, for the first time I seen his name in the paper. I heard about him on the news. Why isn't my son getting a scholarship? And the coach went all around saying some different things, but she said, stop. She said, you got all this education just to tell my son what he came to. She said, I'll tell you something. She pointed, she said, I'm gonna tell you something. Just like dust, one day my son will rise up. And she turned around and walked out to school. 50 years later, I went to my high school class reunion. Fairlawn Country Club. Master of Ceremony said, I want all the football players sit at the same table. The Master of Ceremony said, I want all the football players to stand up and tell which college they graduated from. I was the only one that stood up that said that I graduated from college. And like dust, one day my baby gonna rise up. My son is going to rise up. Out of all the people in the room, I was the only one that finished college. Because after Vietnam, I was determined I was gonna go to school. It took me 20 years to get a 4-year college degree, but I was determined and I prayed and I asked God. I was on academic probation 3 times. I repeated 3 subjects, but I went back. I had to get a tutor to get through math analysis. But I was determined that I was going to make it. At that time, in the 60s, if you weren't in college by October 1st, you became A1 eligible for the draft. Me and my brother Herman, we were drafted the same day at the same time. And the first time I was hit by a vehicle, we were just a bunch of teenagers. We were just a bunch of teenage kids. And after that battle was over, I swore, I said, Lord, if I ever get through this, I will never